Hello and welcome to everybody on Cloud Fitness. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how you can work with the UCX utility in Databricks. So UCX is nothing but it is a Databricks lab project, just like you have Overwatch. So in case you're not aware of Overwatch, you guys can check out my Overwatch video in Databricks as well. Overwatch is a Databricks Labs project to understand the cost associated to each of your clusters and workspace at a workspace level in detail. Similarly, UCX is also a Databricks Lab project to understand whether your workspace is UC compatible or not. So if it is not Unity Catalog compatible, how much incompatibility does it have, or how much compatible it is? How many clusters or which clusters are not UC compatible and why? What all workflows are not UC compatible and why? What all pipelines are not compatible? So things like that, you can get a very detailed analysis on your workspace. So now this will actually help you to migrate to Unity Catalog. So let's say you want to migrate, or you have already migrated, but you still want to check what there might be n number of things that might be still not UC compatible. So what are those? Even that part you can analyze with UCX, and you can improve your workspace and make it fully UC compatible. So it tells you about everything, whether it's your cluster, whether it's your cluster policies, be it your functions, or any kind of permissions, all these things in detail. It will tell you whether it is UC compatible or not. So let's move ahead, and in today's session we are going to understand both theory as well as practical on this UCX. So before moving ahead, you guys can connect with me on LinkedIn, as well as if you guys want to book any one-on-one session with me in terms of resume review, maybe a technical session, you guys can go ahead and check out the TalkMate link as well. I will leave the link in the description box. Similarly, you guys can also check my website bhavnabedi@graphy.com, where I am going to upload some paid courses as well. So let's move ahead. When you talk about UCX, again, I've already told this that this is nothing but it's a Databricks lab project. Now this provide tools to help you upgrade your non Unity catalog workspace to a Unity catalog workspace. Now this labs project, Databricks does not provide any full support for this labs project, and you can also see this project in the GitHub. I will leave the link to the GitHub repository where this particular project is available. Right, you guys can go ahead, check out. They have mentioned everything in detail. We are also going to see it in this video as well. Now what does this UCX do? So this UCX, when you install UCX, it installs set of workflows in your workspace. Now those set of workflows would run, and they will actually assess your whole workflow. That will actually assess your whole workspace to understand what is not UC compatible, and then it is actually going to create data inside set of tables under a database that you specify. So you specify a database. Let's say the database name is UCX, which is the name by default. In that database, it is going to list down all the tables that it has created as part of its workflow, which assesses your workspace and list down all the details related to your UC compatibility within those tables. It also creates a dashboard by default. Again, that dashboard also has all information with regards to your workspace that will help you identify the UC incompatibility of your workspace. Apart from assessment, now when you install UCX, it deploys multiple workflow, not just assessment workflow. So first workflow is assessment workflow, which you run to assess your workspace. After that, it also installs couple of other workflows as well, which we are going to see, like group migration workflow, table migration workflow. So if you have identified, in assessment workflow, you have already identified that, hey, these are the tables which are not compatible. Now I want it to migrate to UC. You can run this table migration workflow. Similarly, group migration workflow, you can run it in order to migrate your tables to UC and so on and so forth. Like that, you have multiple workflows that gets deployed. If you're not understanding, that's okay. The moment you see the practical, you are going to understand it. It is nothing but just set of workflows that gets deployed. Are these the only three workflows? No, you have a couple of more workflows as well that gets deployed, and we are going to see that as well. But now, before seeing the practical, you should make sure that you have these prerequisites before installing this. Before you can install UCX or run UCX workflow, you must meet the following requirements. The first one is you should have Databricks CLI 0.213 or above. So you should have Databricks CLI installed on your computer. The second thing is you should have a Databricks config file. Now, this Databricks config file basically holds the details of the host and the token. It is just to connect to the Databricks. You may or may not have Databricks config file. It is just an authentication. It picks up the Databricks host and token, and it authenticates with your workflow. The CLI can authenticate with the Databricks workspace. Even if you don't mention it in the Databricks config file, you can interactively provide host and token as well. Similarly, you should also have Python 3.10 or above. Similarly, network access from your computer that runs the UCX to Databricks workspace that you are migrating, you should have the network connectivity. There should be no blockage in between. So you should have at least these prerequisites. Similarly, you should be account admin as well as workspace admin. If you are trying to install the UCX, you should be an account admin as well as you should be a workspace as admin as well. So if you are using service principal to install this, it won't work. It's an interactive way to install to install UCX. So if you see right now, there is no automated way to deploy it. So you have to work in an interactive fashion in order to deploy UCX on your workspace, and you cannot use service principal. You have to be account admin or workspace admin for deploying the UCX. So now let's go ahead and check out how you can actually install UCX. So these are few commands which we will be using as well. So let's go ahead and I will show you the workspace first of all that I have. So if you see, this is the workspace. Let me just simply click on launch workspace, and at the same time let me show you this. This is the GitHub link which I'm going to leave in the description box as well. Now this is the Databricks Labs project UCX, and you can see they have mentioned in detail about each and everything as well. So you have to make sure that you have Databricks CLI as well as Python version 3.1 and above, and you can see that they have mentioned in detail about the installation as well as the deployment part as well as the workflow part. We are going to see all of this, so no worries. Now let me simply go ahead and show you the workspace first. And here we go, we're just signing in. So now you can see if I go to my catalog over here, right? In my catalog, I have Hive Metastore, some catalogs. So my workspace might not be 100% UC compatible, right? So now what I'll do is I'll simply go to my command prompt over here. And now what we are going to do, we are going to check the Python version first, Python -- version, and my Python version is 3.12. And similarly, let me say Databricks, and let's say -v, and my Databricks CLI version is 0.223.1. So I have these two prerequisite already there. Now what I want to do is I want to authenticate my system with the Databricks workspace. So for that, you can use any of the commands. So either you can use Databricks auth login, or you can also use Databricks configure token, and you can provide the token. So I already have token and the host in the config file. So I will simply use this Databricks auth login. Let me say Databricks auth login. So what it will do is it will go to my Databricks config file, and then it is going to pick up the host and the token from my config file, and it is going to do the login. And similarly, if you want to put token here directly, then you can use Databricks configure hyphen hyphen token, and you can directly connect using the token as well through the UI. So now if I click on enter and Databricks profile name, I'll just leave it like this for now. And here you go. Now I have to provide my host, and let me provide my profile name over here. So basically what has happened is, in my config file, I already have my profile name set up as X, right? So that's why it is directly authenticated. So let me show you my config file as well. So if you see this, this is my config file. I have already created a profile named as X. My host is this, and this is my token already, right? I have already put this. So that is why when I checked here, I simply said Databricks auth login, and if I go to my Databricks profile name, I have just put X. So what it will do, it will go back to my uh, Databricks config file, and it is going to take the host and the token from here with the profile of X. So the moment it takes in the details over here, so now what it does is the profile X it found, and after that it just authenticated it. So once it has authenticated, right, now what are the next step? I am already able to log in, right, from my Databricks CLI to the Databricks workspace. It has already authenticated. So now what I want to do is I want to install the UCX. So for that I have a command, Databricks labs install UCX. So the moment I do this, what's going to happen? It starts installing the UCX onto my workspace. Now you will see that it starts installing. Now you can see workspace profile defined in Databricks config. So here I have already defined. This is what I showed you as well. I have already defined, I have already configured my host and token in this particular file. And then you can see it has started downloading some packages right now to install it on my workspace. Now remember that right now it is installing, okay, directly through CLI. You can do the same piece of work at the cluster level also. So if you go to the web terminal of the cluster in Databricks, so if I open a cluster in the Databricks, I open the web terminal, I can put in the same commands even there to install UCX, but it's an interactive mode. So remember that this is not something that can be deployed, right? This is something that we have to do interactively. So right now it will take some moment to deploy. Now you guys can see, if you look at this, it is asking me a couple of questions before it can complete the deployment. It is asking inventory database stored in Hive Metastore, default UCX. So basically this is asking you, what do you want to name your database? Now this database will be created inside Hive Metastore. In this database it is going to store all the tables related to UCX that will be generated, okay? The data in those tables will be generated as part of the assessment workflow that you run. So you are going to run the assessment workflow, and the data will be generated and stored into these tables, and that data is nothing but the assessment of your workspace on how compatible your workspace is. So just because I want to name it with default, I'll just press enter. Logging level, so I'll leave it to info. Number of threads, I'll leave it like this. And now you can see how do you want to map workspace groups. So I'll say match by names. Similarly, again enter. I'll leave the most of the things as default. Now, does the given workspace block internet access? No, it does not. Do you want to trigger assessment job after installation? Yes, I want to, but I'll do it manually. So right now I'll leave it to default as no, because I want to show you. Similarly, reconciliation threshold, I'll leave it to default, and then enter. So now you can see it has again started installing it has again started working on it, and then it is asking you, because now it is going to run a dashboard. So now it is going to deploy a dashboard also. So it is asking you, do you already have a SQL warehouse, right, that you want to use, or you want me to create a new one? So now since I already have a SQL warehouse, I'll just choose the warehouse one, because I do have this I do have this warehouse. So if you look at this, enter a number between 0 and 1, because the first one 0 says create a new ProSQL warehouse. You want to create a new one for the dashboard, or you want to use the existing one? So I already have an existing one, SW, serverless, right? So I'll just select one over here and click enter. Then it is asking me if I want to have any instance pool ID to be set in cluster policy. I don't want to. So I'll just hit enter again. And you will see again it is asking me for another question, parallelism for migrating DBFS root delta table with deep clone. I'll just leave it to default of 200. That is the default parallelism that it has. And what is the minimum number of workers and the maximum number of workers that you want to have in the jobs that is created, in the workflow that is created. So I'll just make the maximum to 2, right? And then I'll hit enter. And then again you see that it start asking you that open config file in the browser and continue installing. No, I don't want to do it. I'll just simply leave it to default. It will automatically install. So now you can see that it says installing UCX version 0.3. Okay, it is still installing, creating UCX schema. It will take a moment to do that. So now I'll just quickly go to the workspace and I'll show you that this is the SQL warehouse that I already had, SW, that I have given. I'm asking UCX to use this to create a dashboard. So even if I go to dashboard right now, you will see that there is no dashboard over here. Whatever dashboards you see over here, we have just worked on all of these dashboards somewhere here or there in all our previous videos already, but there is no new dashboard that is created over here. But once the installation is complete, okay, which is running right now, now you can see just now it has started installing some dashboards as well. We will go through each of these dashboards. Now let me check where the installation is. Now it's asking me open job overview in your browser. Let's say no, I don't want to. Do you want to join the current installation to an existing collection? I don't want to. So now you can see it is successfully deployed. It has created the dashboard. Your UCX is 100% deployed. Now if I go to catalog, so now we will see the UCX installation. If I go to catalog, if I go to Hive Metastore, you will see this UCX is here. Now if I click on this UCX, you will see here the couple of tables that are created. Okay. If I click on jobs, okay, or let me click on tables. Okay, that will tell me what all tables are not compatible. So if I click on sample data over here, you will not see any data because these are just the tables that are created. The workflow is yet to be run. The workflow is going to populate all these tables. So let me just click on workflows over here, and you will see, let me just filter them with the name of UCX. So now these are the workflows that got deployed. UCX assessment, experimental workflow linter. It is just so wherever you are seeing experimental, it is just an experimental one. It is not doing anything, but that is just checking. And like this, you can see migrate tables, migrate groups, experiment. Experimental means that it is just going to, it's just a testing that you are doing. It is not going to eventually do anything in the experimental. So migrate groups, this is going to help you migrate the groups to the UC. Similarly, migrate data reconciliation. So like that, you have multiple workflows. This is a last project, so Databricks keep on enhancing it as well, somewhere or the other. But the main workflow over here is this, the assessment workflow. So if I go inside this assessment workflow, you will see that if I click on the tasks over here, so it has a couple of tasks already deployed as part of this. So if you see setup, crawl tables, crawl grants, workspace listing, crawl permissions. So if I click on any of these, right, so you will see it's nothing but it's a Python wheel package that is deployed, right? So this workflow itself is nothing. All of them are nothing but it's a Python wheel package that is being deployed. Now, you see this is the workflow that we need to run. So I'll just simply click on run now. Okay. You will see that it starts running. Now, it will take around 20-30 minutes. That is the usual time that it takes depending upon your workspace. So it will run for 20-30 minutes and it is going to populate the table that I have over here. Let me open it as well. So in these tables, you will see the data getting populated. Now each of this, let me again go to the tables over here. inside the UCX. Okay, so let's click on jobs over here. So we'll see it one by one, at least the schema first, while the time the workflow is running. So job ID, success and failure here means, the success means whether it has succeeded the UC compatibility. Failure means it has not succeeded the UC compatibility. Job name. Similarly, if I go to, let's say, tables, which is again something that is very much needed. So which catalog, which database, what is the name, what is the type of object, location, all that details related to the tables, whether it is UC compatible or not. Similarly, UDFs, if you see, so this tables will actually have the details of all the tables. Now from this particular table, the details will be taken in these two tables: table failure, table size, table estimate. So if you click on table failures, this is going to give you the actual result, whether your table has actually succeeded to be a UC table or not. So you can simply apply a filter on this. You see this error. It is going to give you the error, right? Whether it has actually succeeded or not in this particular column. Similarly, UDFs, if you have any user defined functions, right? So if you see again, it has success and failures. So whether it succeeded to be part of UC or it did not succeed. Similarly, workflow problems, any problems related to your workflows, any mounts over here. And similarly, this object is like a generic table. So when I say object, this object table, any object, it can be your mount points, it can be your cluster, it can be your jobs, it can be your pipelines, everything. So all these are different objects. It is going to have the data over here. Similarly, policies. Do you have any UC incompatible policies? Any pipelines failures? And similarly, anything related to job. And similarly, you will have cluster also. So if you click on clusters, right? So whether your cluster, if you see success and failure, your Spark version. So like that, it is actually going to give you complete detail. Now again, if I click on the dashboard, so you will see you get these dashboards. So if I click on the UC assessment main, because that is one that should actually matter to you. So in this dashboard, you might not have details over here at the moment because the workflow has to run end to end. Okay, because workflow has to run and it has to populate the UCX database, the data in the tables, and from those tables these values are fetched. So UC readiness, how much compatible. Now UC readiness, again, if I click on these three dots, okay, now if you see this UC readiness, it is nothing but it's a query on the base tables that we have seen right now, right? So like this, if you see assessment summary, it will tell you what all has failed, right? Database summary, table types, UDF summary, storage summary, external location, what are the mount points that you need to migrate, what are the incompatible clusters, what are the incompatible cluster policies, job assessment summaries, which jobs have failed. So all that details you can actually find it over here. Just because right now it is running, it has not shown you any data. So even if you look at this incompatible delta live table, right? So it will tell you even if you have any incompatible delta live tables as well. So this is the dashboard and it's a very good dashboard that you get. So if I go to my workspace, this particular workflow, it is still running, but yeah, eventually that is the whole idea. But now how you can actually use it? So the way we have set it up right now, in the similar way you can also set it up in your organization. The moment you do that, you actually get to understand what all tables are UC incompatible and all that details, and this will help you in the migration. Okay, now one suggestion from my side is when I look at the workflows over here, you might, now since it's a lab project, it's not a full-fledged project. So if I see UCX over here, I would actually say you can simply run this UCX assessment, which will give you this dashboard and it will also give you these tables, right? The tables and the dashboard. So from here, you can yourself see, uh, what all views, what all your storage allocations, what are mount points, or your incompatible UDFs, jobs. You can actually see them yourself and then you can migrate them yourself, everything. So if you see over here, there is no cluster migration workflow, right? So similarly, even if you check these groups, so you have to manually, there's a lot of interactiveness here. So you have to manually specify which group you want to migrate where. Similarly, if you want to migrate tables, now which table you want to migrate where. So all these things you need to specify manually in order to run and execute these workflows. So I would actually suggest if to ignore all of these workflows, just simply run UCX assessment, assess it, and then, because this is a one time setup that you have to do, so take all the tables, help in the migration yourself, because again that is also interactive, and even these jobs are also pretty much interactive. They need a lot of user interaction and user debugging. Okay, so this is something that I have observed, but yes, you guys can check it out. Now since this workflow is going to take a lot of time, maybe 20-30 minutes, and I would carry out the this whole video or this whole session in the next I'll create a separate video part 2 of Unity Catalog UCX, where you guys can also check out how this dashboard looked like. Maybe it will be just 5 minutes video. So I'll cover it up in the next session as well, because this is going to take a lot of time. So thank you so much for being till here. Do remember to like, share and subscribe my channel, and apart from that, do check out my website bhavnabedi.graphy.com. You guys can go ahead, check out the courses as well, and do provide your love and support. So thank you so much for being till here.